During my pregnancy, my mother-in-law constantly belittled me, criticizing everything from my appearance to my health. She compared me to imaginary, perfect pregnant women, making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Those 9 months were an emotional struggle. After our baby was born, my husband finally cut ties with her, realizing how toxic her behavior had been. I realized the day would not go as planned the moment my mother-in-law leaned over the table and said, "You're not feminine enough to carry my grandchild." For a second, the entire room fell silent. Lucas squeezed my hand tighter under the table, but I still felt the blood drain from my face. My name is Camilla. I'm 27. I was born into a big, noisy Mexican family where everyone supports each other even when we argue. Lucas, my husband, 29, is from a small conservative town. A calm, kind father, a sweet sister who became like a best friend to me, and then there was his mother. Maryanne always knew how to ruin even the happiest moments. When I first stepped into their home, she already looked at me with suspicion. Not because I was rude or cold. On the contrary, I tried to be polite and warm. But to her, I was wrong. Too independent, too educated, too much myself. I work as a marine biologist, and I've always been proud of my career. My family is proud of me too. But to Maryanne, it was an insult. She believed a woman should stay at home and care for her husband. The closer Lucas and I grew, the harder she pushed. Snide remarks about my lack of femininity, my inappropriate profession, my ambitions ruining the family. Lucas defended me from the very beginning. He told his mother flat out that her opinion would not influence his choice. It should have been enough. It wasn't. After we got engaged, her disapproval became almost tangible. When we announced we would have a small wedding with only close family, she threw a tantrum, accusing us of being selfish. On our wedding day, she loudly criticized my dress, the food, the guest list. I tried to ignore it, but her whispers and disapproving looks chipped away at my patience. After the wedding, there was a brief calm. Lucas and I moved into our own home, building our new life together. I was happy, until the day those 2 lines appeared on the pregnancy test. We decided to keep the news private at first. We wanted to savor the moment, just the two of us, without outside interference. A mistake. When Maryanne found out that we had told others before her rage exploded like a storm. She accused me of stealing her joy, insisting she should have been the first to know. That was the first time I truly wondered. What if her interference was only just beginning? I had no idea how far she was willing to go to control not just my life, but my pregnancy itself. When Lucas and I finally shared the news about my pregnancy with the family, we thought it would be a moment of pure happiness. For most people, it was. His father beamed with pride. My parents cried tears of joy. And even his sister hugged me so tightly I thought she might never let go. But of course, there was one person who couldn't just let us be happy. Lucas's mother, Maryanne, called me less than an hour after the announcement. Her voice was tight with anger as she accused me of disrespecting her by not telling her first. I tried to stay calm, reminding her that it was our news to share when we were ready, but she refused to listen. She insisted that as the grandmother, she had a right to know before anyone else. When I suggested she discuss her feelings with Lucas instead of directing her frustration at me, she hung up the phone without another word. I told Lucas what happened, and he immediately sent her a message making it clear that her behavior was unacceptable and that we would not tolerate guilt trips or emotional manipulation. Maryanne didn't take it well. Over the next few weeks, she made every gathering uncomfortable. Whenever she spoke about the baby, she compared me to Lucas's sister, Emma, who was also expecting. Emma, who had always been the perfect daughter, became Maryanne's new standard. Every time I mentioned morning sickness or exhaustion, Maryanne would make a show of saying how wonderfully Emma was handling her pregnancy. According to her, Emma never complained. Emma never looked tired. Emma was just meant to be a mother, unlike me. I tried to shrug it off at first, chalking it up to Maryanne's usual controlling ways. But the comments kept coming, each one sharper than the last. At a family dinner, when I had to leave the table early because I was feeling nauseous, Maryanne loudly commented that some women just aren't built for motherhood. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I kept my head high and walked out without saying a word. Later that night, Lucas sat next to me on the couch, rubbing my back as I fought back tears. "You know she's wrong," he said quietly. "You're already the best mother our baby could ever have." His words helped more than he could know. Still, no matter how much I tried to ignore Maryanne's cruelty, it started to seep into my mind during quiet moments, making me question myself. I knew I had to be strong, not just for me, but for our child. And deep down, I was beginning to realize something else too. It didn't matter how much effort I put into being accepted by Maryanne. She had already made up her mind about me long ago. Nothing I did would ever be enough. It was a painful truth, but it was one I needed to face if I was going to protect my family from the storm that was only just beginning. The day of Emma's gender reveal party should have been a celebration, But instead, it turned into another battlefield. We had agreed that each of us would help organize the other's reveal as a way to support each other and share the joy. It felt natural, a symbol of how close Emma and I had grown despite all the chaos surrounding us. When I handed Emma the envelope with my baby's gender and she handed me hers, it felt like a small act of trust. But apparently, to Maryanne, it was a betrayal. She found out about our plan just days before the party and called Lucas in a rage, insisting that as the future grandmother, she had the right to be the one organizing every event related to my pregnancy. Lucas calmly told her that we had already made our decision and that it wasn't up for debate. She didn't take that well. At the party, she barely spoke to anyone. She sat in a corner with her arms crossed, shooting daggers at me with her eyes every time someone congratulated me. When Emma announced she was having a girl and I announced I was having a boy, Maryanne actually clapped, loud and fake, and then muttered under her breath that at least one of them was doing it right. I pretended not to hear, but my hands were shaking as I cut into the cake. Emma noticed, and later pulled me aside to apologize for her mother's behavior, even though none of it was her fault. I assured her that I didn't blame her, but the cracks in my composure were starting to show. It wasn't just the comments. It was the way Maryanne hijacked conversations, twisting every happy moment into a comparison contest where I was always found lacking. I couldn't enjoy the celebration without feeling like I was under constant surveillance, being judged for every laugh, every gesture, every word. After the party, Lucas and I sat in the car for a long time without speaking. Finally, he turned to me and said, "This isn't normal. You know that, right?" I nodded, feeling the lump rise in my throat. I was tired of pretending, tired of making excuses for her, tired of pretending her cruelty didn't cut deep. That night, as we lay in bed, Lucas held me close and promised, "We'll figure this out. No matter what it takes, I'll protect you and our son." For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe I didn't have to endure Maryanne's treatment forever. Maybe there was another way, a way to build our family free from her poison. I just didn't realize yet how far she would go before we reached that breaking point. The months that followed were supposed to be peaceful, a time for preparing the nursery and cherishing the final stretch before our son arrived. Instead, they were filled with constant jabs and power plays from Maryanne. When Christmas came, Lucas told her we wouldn't be attending the family gathering because I was too far along and couldn't travel. Maryanne reacted as expected, with a tantrum, accusing Lucas of trying to cut her out of his life and blaming me for poisoning his mind. She refused to believe that my pregnancy had anything to do with our decision, and when Lucas ignored her calls, she escalated. She began texting him demands, ordering us to appear at her house at a specific time. When Lucas reminded her we had already explained our reasons, she called him again, shouting that he needed to control me before I ruined the family. Hearing that broke something inside me. I had tried so hard to give her the benefit of the doubt, to excuse her behavior as overprotectiveness, but there was no excuse left. She didn't respect me. She didn't even see me as a person, just an obstacle between her and her son. I shared my feelings with Lucas and Emma, and for the first time, no one tried to convince me to be patient or forgiving. They saw it too now. Maryanne had crossed every line. We decided together that after the baby was born, we would put clear, firm boundaries in place, and if she crossed them, we wouldn't hesitate to cut her off. I clung to that plan like a lifeline in the final weeks of my pregnancy. I needed to believe that once our son arrived, the nightmare would end. But life, as it often does, had its own timeline. My labor started unexpectedly at 33 weeks. I was terrified. We rushed to the hospital, and after an emergency C-section, our little boy was born. Tiny but fierce, crying loudly the moment he entered the world. Lucas held my hand the entire time, whispering how proud he was of me. In that moment, all the noise faded away. There was only us and the tiny miracle we had brought into the world. As I lay in recovery, Lucas updated both our families. My side exploded with joy and support. His was a different story. Maryanne was furious that she hadn't been notified the moment contractions started. She flooded Lucas's phone with angry messages, demanding to know why she wasn't allowed to be in the delivery room. Lucas didn't respond. He was too busy holding our son against his chest, skin to skin, promising him that he would never let anything hurt him. I watched them through heavy eyelids, feeling a fierce, protective love rise inside me. We had fought so hard to build this family. We weren't going to let anyone, family or not, tear it apart. The official announcement of our son's name should have been a moment of pure joy. Instead, it turned into another battlefield. We had chosen a beautiful, meaningful name, honoring both our heritages, something Lucas and I were deeply proud of. When Lucas sent the announcement in the family chat, my family showered us with congratulations and love. Maryanne, however, immediately called Lucas, crying hysterically. She hated the name. She claimed it sounded too foreign, that it would make her grandson stand out for all the wrong reasons. Lucas calmly told her that the decision was ours and ours alone. She then suggested that we change his name officially, or at least use a more acceptable name for public occasions, treating our son's identity like it was a dirty secret. When Lucas refused, she switched tactics. She insisted she would call him by a different name herself, claiming it was her special grandmother privilege. That crossed a line. Lucas firmly told her that if she couldn't respect our son's name, she would lose the right to see him. Predictably, Maryanne blew up, accusing me again of driving a wedge between her and Lucas, of brainwashing him into abandoning his roots. But this time, Lucas didn't waver. He hung up. In the weeks that followed, we kept our distance. Maryanne tried to reach out several times, sending long, guilt-tripping messages about how she only wanted to be part of her grandson's life, about how unfair we were being. Each time, Lucas ignored them. Our priority was our son's safety, his peace, and our peace. When the day finally came for her to meet him, she crossed yet another line. She showed up with a bottle of formula and insisted that I should stop breastfeeding so she could feed him and bond. She argued that breastfeeding was selfish because it made it harder for others, meaning her, to have access to the baby. I was stunned by her audacity. My mother, who was visiting, stepped in and explained firmly and calmly that breastfeeding was vital for a newborn's health. Maryanne rolled her eyes and muttered that I was just using it as an excuse to keep her away. That was the moment Lucas stood up, took our son from her arms, and asked her to leave. She cried and protested, but he didn't budge. He looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You either respect our family or you're not part of it." Watching him stand up to her with such calm strength made me fall in love with him all over again. That night, as we rocked our baby to sleep, I knew we were doing the right thing. We were building something different, something healthy, something strong. And there was no room in it for Maryanne's toxicity. Christmas approached, and with it, an unbearable pressure from Maryanne. She flooded Lucas with messages demanding we attend the family gathering, insisting it was a sacred tradition we had no right to break. Lucas reminded her gently but firmly that I couldn't travel long distances so soon after giving birth, but she wasn't interested in hearing it. She accused him of abandoning his family, of letting me control him. The final straw came when she texted him a schedule, demanding we arrive exactly at 4 p.m. or else be prepared for consequences. Lucas simply blocked her number after that. We decided to spend Christmas quietly at home, cherishing our first holiday as a family of 3. No drama, no guilt, just peace. But Maryanne wasn't done. A week later, she showed up uninvited at our door, pounding loudly and demanding to be let in. Lucas didn't even open the door. He called the police, explaining the situation calmly while we stayed inside, holding our son close. She eventually left before the authorities arrived, but the damage was done. Any lingering doubts we had about cutting her off completely disappeared. We realized we needed to protect our peace fiercely, without apology. After that incident, we changed the locks and installed security cameras. We also warned close friends and neighbors not to share any information about us if she came asking. My heart ached for Lucas, watching him wrestle with the sadness of losing a mother who refused to change. But he reassured me, again and again, that protecting our son was more important than clinging to a broken relationship. Meanwhile, my bond with Lucas's sister, Mia, grew even stronger. She was disgusted by her mother's behavior and fully supported our decision. The shared experience of dealing with Maryanne's manipulation created an unbreakable bond between us. When Mia gave birth to her daughter a few months later, she made it clear that Maryanne would not be part of her child's life either. She even instructed the hospital staff to block Maryanne from visiting. Hearing that gave me a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness that it had come to this. Relief that someone else understood. As Lucas and I rocked our son to sleep that night, we whispered promises to each other. To protect him, to raise him in a home filled with love and respect, not fear and control. We weren't just breaking away from Maryanne's toxic legacy. We were building something better. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly found a new rhythm. We fell into the beautiful chaos of newborn life. Sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, quiet moments of wonder as we watched our son grow. Every milestone felt like a victory, a small triumph over the darkness Maryanne had tried to cast over our lives. Mia and I often met for walks with the babies, laughing about the tiny disasters that came with parenthood and sharing our quiet victories. Meanwhile, Lucas's father, Peter, remained a steady presence. He respected our boundaries, visited only when invited, and made it clear he wanted no part in Maryanne's drama. Lucas admitted once, late at night, that he had always envied the big, close-knit families he saw in movies. Now, he said, he finally felt like he had one, just a smaller, chosen version. But even as we built our new normal, Maryanne tried to claw her way back into our lives. She left voicemails dripping with fake sweetness, sent gifts we returned unopened, tried to guilt-trip Mia through distant relatives. Mia stood firm. So did we. Each ignored call. Each unopened letter was another step toward reclaiming our peace. I won't pretend it was easy. Some days, I felt the old guilt creeping back in, whispering that maybe we were too harsh. Maybe we owed her something. But then I would remember her screaming outside our door, trying to force her way into a life she had poisoned. And I knew we were doing the right thing. The real shift happened the day Lucas sat down and wrote a letter. Not to Maryanne, but to himself. He poured out years of hurt, of unmet expectations, of longing for a mother who would never exist. He sealed the letter and burned it in our backyard, the ashes swirling into the sky like the last remnants of a nightmare. Watching him, I realized we were not just cutting ties. We were healing, not for revenge, not out of anger, but for us, for our son, for the future we deserved. As the sun set that evening, painting the sky in soft oranges and blues, I held Lucas's hand and whispered, "We're free now." And for the first time in a long, long time, it felt true. Our final break with Maryanne came not with a bang, but with a quiet, firm silence. After months of being ignored, she finally seemed to understand that she no longer had a place in our lives. No more desperate calls, no more guilt-soaked letters, just silence. The peace was almost jarring at first, like stepping into a house where all the noise had been sucked out. But as the weeks passed, the quiet began to feel like a blessing. We celebrated our son's first birthday surrounded by people who truly loved us. Mia and her fiancé announced their engagement during the party, and we laughed and cried together, knowing we had survived something few people could truly understand. Lucas's father came, bringing a handmade rocking chair he had crafted for our son, a symbol of steady love that didn't need to shout to be real. As I watched our little boy wobble across the lawn clutching his new toy truck, I realized something. Maryanne hadn't destroyed us. She had set us free. In fighting so hard to control us, she had pushed us to build stronger walls, tighter bonds, deeper roots. Lucas and I often talked late into the night, dreaming about the future we were creating. A future not chained to guilt or fear. We agreed that one day when our son was older, we would tell him the truth, but on our terms. Not out of bitterness, but to show him the strength it takes to choose peace over chaos. As the last guests left and the sun dipped below the horizon, Lucas pulled me close and whispered, "We're not the family she tried to force on us. We're the family we chose to be." And standing there, with the cool evening breeze wrapping around us and the sound of our son's giggles floating through the air, I knew he was right. We weren't survivors of her cruelty. We were builders of something better, something real, something no one could ever take away from us again.